Hello and welcome to the Yorkshire Voice News at 4 o'clock. I'm Elizabeth King. Coming up on today's show, as Endometriosis Awareness Month comes to an end, we hear why the condition needs to be taken more seriously.
Although I was told that I couldn't actually have children, so both my little boys are miracles.
And tomorrow is April Fool's Day. We find out about the best pranks.
Well, in primary school, I bought a toy spider and scared a load of people.
But first, a report has been found that a quarter of fire and service staff has reported alleged racism, homophobic and sexist behaviour in the past 5 years. We can now cross to our reporter, Roxy Allen, who's in Leeds.
Thank you, Lizzie. This revelation of discrimination and bullying is described to be just the tip of the iceberg. His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Service has independently acknowledged and assessed the situation surrounding the values of all 44 fire and rescue services across the country, including here in West Yorkshire, with a report they published online yesterday. They said that they have particularly focused on problems with more than half of the services where there have been concerns with bullying and harassment, discrimination, lack of fairness and diversity, and also with the reporting and handling of cases of misconduct. In a quarter of the services, there have also been reports of homophobia as well as racist and sexist behaviour. Now, the report said this is a widespread issue and is easily being disguised as casual banter between colleagues and friends. For example, it has been reported that homophobic language was sprayed on the return of the locker of a firefighter, and 2 firefighters have been reported to have joked about raping a female colleague. We have asked West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service for a comment. They have not got back to us yet. However, Gavin Marshall, the Regional Secretary of the Fire Brigades Union, spoke to our reporter Mia Hagger about how this widespread issue affects
what we are
West
going to see from the report is very much like the London Culture Review, is that each brigade is now going to go out there and take a look into what this report has reported. Look at the recommendations, and hopefully what we will see on the back of that is how, if there is that impact within like the West Yorkshire or any of the other Yorkshire brigades, is then how we could start to tackle those kind of concerns. I think what's really benefit about a report like this being issued, although it's very damning, is that hopefully we're going to get to that point where people will feel a lot more comfortable coming forward and reporting acts of equalities.
So you said, like, obviously a lot of people are kind of concerned about coming forwards with their challenges or reports of discriminatory behaviour towards themselves. And you welcome the challenge, you welcome the changes, but what changes can be made to make sure that these people going forwards do feel comfortable coming forwards with their experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the question that everybody's really asking of this. It's not going to be an overnight thing. I can't remember how many recommendations there was. There was quite a lot. So they're going to have to. Each service is going to have to work through each of those. But it's gonna take a while for people to feel confident. But it's going to have to come from that belief from all the way up the system. So, if they're in the reports and people are talking about, that they feared because of the boys club at the top, that they just kind of cover it up and sweep it under the rug. So that needs to be broken down.
The report says every single person working in a fire and rescue service, as well as every single member of the public, deserves to be treated with respect, and a great deal more is needed to improve values. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Roxy. Now, March has been Endometriosis Action Month, and the charity is working to educate people about the condition and is trying to raise awareness of it. For me, it's a personal issue because I am a sufferer and a part of the statistics that 1 in 10 women of reproductive age have endometriosis. The prevalence of endometriosis in women with fertility is between 30 and 50%, and it affects around 1.5 million women. That's the same as the number of those that have diabetes. Well, like me, Lisa Bradley also has endometriosis, and I asked her how it affects her life.
I always feel very awkward at the age of 45 about having to take time off work due to my periods. There's an assumption that you don't really have that kind of problem when you get to my age in terms of heavy, painful flows, but it can be debilitating. sometimes the pain can be so bad that I do have to stay in bed and I can't get up. And it feels like, I say, like, I feel like people judge me for it because it seems there's a bit of a preconception that, or misconception, should I say, that women should just be able to deal with it.
Do you think workplaces are adapting to people that have endometriosis?
Honestly, not really. I still think there's a long way to go with endometriosis. It is a lot more talked about now than it was when I was first diagnosed in my 20s.
Why do you think it is so hard for people to get diagnosed with endometriosis?
I think it's difficult because I do appreciate the symptoms can look like a number of different things. To be honest, I was offered counselling because people were suggesting it was in my head, and then it was IBS, and then eventually they took me to theatre, opened me up, had a look, and were very apologetic.
How can the NHS improve their gynecology service?
I think it's really hard because I have a lot of sympathy for the NHS. They're under massive, budget cuts, and that's not their fault, I don't think. I do think early intervention would be a really good idea.
Local elections are just around the corner, but this year, for the first time, you'll be required to bring photo ID when you vote in person. That ID could be a driver's licence or passport, but it could also be an older person's bus pass. You can also apply for a voter authority certificate. Well, Unlock Democracy is very against the idea.
Government, when they assessed this proposal, they identified themselves that the groups that were going to be most badly affected by this were young people, they were people with disabilities, and they were older people, particularly the 75 plus age group. And therefore, we can expect those people to be particularly discriminated against when it comes to elections that are taking place on May the 4th. But also, there's this big issue that even people who have photographic voter ID, there are still roughly a quarter of people around the country who have no awareness that the rules on elections have changed and will require them to take photographic voter ID to the polling station.
In Knaresborough, the community is campaigning to keep their countryside out of the hands of developers. They've clubbed together and have bought most of the land themselves, a total of 60 acres of fields. Our reporter MJ Binns went to find out why the land is so important to them.
The city of Knaresborough is surrounded by fields and beautiful views that are important to the community.
Well, we heard that it was going to come up for sale, and we thought we can't let this land go in the wrong direction. It has to be community land, it has to be available to the community, and it has to be protected for nature and for wildlife.
I'm delighted to have been involved in the project. I've walked the countryside and I've loved the countryside all my life, and I'm absolutely horrified about the amount of building that's taking place these days. This is at the moment greenbelt land, but we know that greenbelt everywhere is under threat.
But it's not just the beautiful views that are important to them, it's the rich history of the city that's just as important.
What's really interesting about this land is actually it dates back to sort of 1134, 1167, I think. King John, who lived in that castle right over there, you can see. This was his hunting ground, Knaresborough Forest, and it stretched 20 miles or so over towards Skipton, blubber houses, and all across. It consisted of 3 deer chases and comprised of all sorts of villages. It's kind of the old idea of what a forest was, a cluster of villages, hamlets, communities all sort of working together, different habitat, glades, woodlands, grasslands. So this, to me, is a really big step in trying to almost revive the Knaresborough Forest.
The next stages for this project is a walk that's taking place on April 15th to sign the last agreement in the Mitre.
Music is a huge part of Leeds' rich culture and has brought people in the city together for decades. A couple of new outdoor spaces in the city centre are being turned into venues for dance music events. One of these is an unused car park located on Trent Street in Holbeck, looking onto apartments and the Clayton Hotel. Creative specialists, new citizens are behind the project and will focus on transforming the area ready for hundreds to attend in late April this year. Over in Wakefield, the live webcam of the Peregrine Falcons at the cathedral is being watched by many in anticipation of an egg hatching over the weekend. There are 3 eggs currently in the nest, and the egg that is due to hatch will be named after BBC Leeds breakfast host Rima Ahmed. Now it's time to head over to our sports desk, where Alex Smith will have the latest on Leeds United as the Premier League returns after its international break.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And yes, the Premier League is back this weekend and the Whites face an unenviable task of a trip to the league leaders Arsenal. The Gunners have lost just 3 times in the league this season, so a tall order for Leeds to go there and get something, you may think. Well, don't forget they have won at Anfield already this season and were unlucky to only draw at Manchester United. But Xavi Gracia confirmed in his press conference this morning that his squad has been hit with injuries over the break. Wilfried Gnonto was injured whilst playing for Italy, Tyler Adams tweaked his hamstring whilst with the United States, and Maximilian Verber has also sustained an injury.
Sometimes it's good because you can see your players enjoying with the national teams, scoring goals, getting good results, and this is the positive part. But in the last international break, we had some big problems for us.
Now, Darren Harper is the host of the award-winning LS11 Leeds United podcast, and I spoke to him earlier about this weekend's match.
I don't think this weekend will define their season, but if Leeds can go there and get a draw, I think all of us on the podcast this week thought a draw would be a fantastic result. And if they can go there and get a draw, then, I mean, that would be spectacular. But yeah, it's not season defining for Leeds, but if they can get something out of it, yeah, they will feel cock a hoop going into some pretty big games next week, like with Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace coming up. Those are the games they really need to be getting some major points out of.
I went down to Ellen Road earlier, and the general consensus amongst fans is that the Whites are in for a tough afternoon in North London.
I'm hoping to draw, but you never can tell with Leeds down in Arsenal. They're a fabulous team, but who knows if we turn up on the day, perform what we're supposed to perform like? Who knows? It could be a win, could be a draw. I'm hoping it's not a hammering, but you never can tell with Leeds at the moment.
I'm going to expect a loss, to be honest with you. They're on really good form, Arsenal, with 2 or 3 or maybe 3 or 4 players missing, so it's going to be difficult for us. It's not a game we expect to win, but there you go.
Not really. Our best centre-back's out and our best midfielder's out and Willie Gnonto's out, so it's going to be hard.
And that's all from me. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Alex. And now it's time to cross over to Amelia for the weather. What's it like out there, Amelia?
Thanks, Lizzie. Well, today it's been trying to rain. It's been spitting quite a bit, but it seems to have cleared up now. We've still got our Yorkshire Voice umbrella out and ready for any light drizzle coming through. These conditions will persist throughout the evening and overnight, with occasional outbreaks of rain and a minimum temperature of 3 degrees. Tomorrow will remain cloudy with outbreaks of light rain at times and a maximum temperature of 8 degrees. So wrap up warm and get your brollies out. Back to you in the studio. Thank you, Lizzie.
Well, the weather has been a total joke all week, and it sounds like tomorrow will be the same as it's April Fool's Day. I'm sure you know about it, but it's a day of practical jokes and hoaxes. We asked the people of Leeds to share their best April Fool's pranks with us.
Well, in primary school, I bought a toy spider and scared a load of people.
So it was in the office, we were talking about April Fool's Day, and one of my colleagues said to me, "Oh, do you know the latest word that's been added to the dictionary? It's gullible." And I said, "Oh, really? Oh, I didn't realise that." And then obviously the whole office erupted into laughter.
So we put an alarm clock behind someone's bed where they couldn't reach, and it went off every 4 or 5 hours, and we left it there for a good 3 or 4 weeks. And the guy just got really, really annoyed and couldn't sleep and all sorts, and we didn't tell him for ages.
Me and some of my friends, we grabbed some eggs and just whacked eggs on someone's head. It was one of our other mates, and we literally just ran off and he started chasing us with an egg on his head.
I might have to steal some of those ideas for tomorrow. Well, this has been our last show for the Yorkshire Voice, and our small but perfectly formed team have loved every minute of bringing you the news for the past fortnight. We'll leave you now with a look back of some of our favourite outtakes. Goodbye and thank you for watching.
With his hand still, guys. I don't like it. Oh no.
I don't want to retire. I don't know how it's reached the top 50.
Check it. Walk past.